there. Hello, Aaron. Good Shabbos. I see Ed Smith is there. Nice to see your face again. Okay, we're going to jump into Ashrei for Mincha on Shabbat afternoon. We'll do a little bit of Torah reading. We'll do some Torah discussion. And if you're up for it, I'm really happy to make this a discussion. So you can ask to be unmuted at the appropriate time if you want to do so, because it'll work better kind of as an interaction than a frontal. We are on page 214 in the Lev Shalem, page 226 in the Slim Shalom, 558 in the Sim Shalom. And the tune is, what's the tune, Lev? Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yalu Chasela Ashrei Ha'am Shekacha Lo Ashrei Ha'am Shadonai Elohav. The tune that's only done on Shabbat afternoon. Tilal David Michal. Tilat Ranai Daber Pi Baraku Basar Shem Kochol Leolam Ba'ed Banachton Barak Yam Yatav Olam Hallelujah Ubalat Zion Goel Shavei Feshev Yakum Nium Adonai Vanizot Britiotam Amar Adonai Ruchi Asher Alecha Udvarai Asher Samti Beficha Lo Yamushu Mipicha Pizaracha. Kadosh Yisrael Yisrael V'Karazel Zev Yamar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvon Chalaretz Kevodo Mekablin Dain V'Dain V'Amrin V'Tisayini Ruach V'Shmacharei Kol Rash Gadol Barak V'Adonai Mim Komo Untalatni Rucha B'Shemet Batrai Kazi Adonai Yimloch Leolam Ba'ed. Adonai Hashem Elchaneinu v'yom koreinu baruch Eloheinu shibranu lichvodo v'yigdilanu min hatovim. V'yivtechu v'chayodei shemecha ki lo azavta darshecha Adonai Adonai chavetz l'man tzidko yagdil Torah v'ya'adir. This is one of these weeks where we anticipate a certain parsha many weeks in a row. So last Shabbat was Rosh Hashanah. No, that is not true. Last Shabbat was Shabbat Shuvah and a Parshat Ha'azinu, which means we're at V'zot HaBracha, which we read this Shabbat afternoon. And then next week is a very kind of strange thing. It's not that strange, but on the Jewish calendar where we read V'zot HaBracha, Shabbat afternoon mincha, anticipating the next time we're actually going to read it, which is actually that night again we read it for Simchat Torah in the next morning. Because you always read on Shabbat afternoon, the next time you're going to read kind of a full parsha in shul. So V'zot HaBracha, page 1202 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. One second, everybody. The reason I paused is because I was looking for a siddur that has the exact breakdown of the verses, but it's okay. I think I know what they're supposed to be. And either way, since we don't have aliyot, it's okay if we don't do it at the exact same spot. So V'zot HaBracha, the last parsha of the Torah, which we read on Simchat Torah. Was anyone assigned to read today before I jump into it? Okay. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. וזאת הברכה אשר ברך משה איש אלוהים את פני ישראל לפני מותו ויאמר אדוני מסיני בא וזרח משעיר למו הופיע מהר פרן ואתה מרבבות קודש מימינו איש דת למו אף חובב עמים כל קדושה בידיך והם תוכו לרגליך יישא מדברותיך תורה ציווה לנו משה מורשה קהילת יעקב ויהי בשורון מלך והתאסף ראשי עם יחד שבטי ישראל יחי ראובן ועל ימות ויהי מטב מספר בזאת ליהודה ויאמר שמע אדוני כל יהודה ועל עמו תביאנו ידיו רהב לו ויעזר מצריו תהיה. Second Aliyah, page 1204, chapter 33 of the book of Dvarim, verse 8. וללוי אמר תומך ואורך לאיש חסידך אשר ניסיתו במסע תריבהו על ממריבה האומר לאביו ולאמו לא ראיתי וידך לא הכיר ואת פניו לא ידע כי שמרו אמרתך ובריתך ינצורו יורו משפטיך ליעקב ותורך לישראל ישימו כתורה ויפך וחליל על מזבחך ברך אדוני חילו ופועל מתניו תרצה בחץ מאזניים קמיו ומשנאיו מן יקומון לבנימין אמר ידיד אדוני ישכון לבטח עליו חופף עליו כל היום ובין כתפיו שכן. Third Aliyah, וליוסף אמר מבורכת אדוני ארצו ממגד בשמיים מטל ומתומר בעץ התחת וממגד צבאות שמש וממגד גרש ירחים ומראש הרי קדם וממגד גיבות עולם וממגד ארץ ומלואה ורצון שוכני סנה תבותה לראש יוסף ולקדקוד נזיר אחיו בחור שורו הדר לו וקרני רעים קרניו בהם עמים ינגח יחדיו אפסי ארץ והם רבבות אפרים והם אלפי מנשה. That's the Torah reading for V'zot HaBracha. We'll now do what I once forgot to do when I was leading Shabbat Mincha, which is the Amidah for Mincha. We do a special Amidah for Yontif for the Shabbat inclusions. So let me just find the pages in the Lev Shalem. It's on page 306 is the Amidah for Yontif. Hold on, I don't know if I have the page numbers of the other ones, and the other sidurs are not in front of me. One second, everyone. I don't have those other page numbers in front of me for some reason. So if you have the Slim Shalom or the Sim Shalom, you just need to find the standard Amidah for Yontif, and you make inclusions for Sukkot and for Shabbat. And we'll do that quietly, and then we'll come out with Aleinu and for some Torah study. Again, the Lev Shalem, it's 306. If you're still davening, please continue at your own pace. We're going to continue with the Aleinu on page 231.
Aleinu לשבח לדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית שלא עשינו כלי הרצות ולא שמנו משפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו כמשפחות האדמה ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו וגובהי מרומיים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד אלוהינו אפס זולתו ככתוב בתורתו ודעת היום ובשבועות אלה ברכה כי אדוני הוא לאלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ ויתחד אין עוד
בתפארת עוזך ותקן המלכות שדי.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Now, in order to know whether or not we have a minyan, I have to figure out how many people are on each screen. So I see there are two back racks. I see, Elliot, are you alone or is Marlon there? Two, that's four. Two Wolves, that's six. Two Friedmans, that's eight. Oh, so we got a minyan. Terrific. Okay, so Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 282, 232, 249, or 600. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'alma, Divra, Chirutei, V'amlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, Bagala, V'izman Kari, V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mavorach, Le'olam, Le'olmei Maya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Kudusha, Brihu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'yimeru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, v'yaseh shalom, aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Okay, again, Shabbat Shalom, good Gentiv, everybody. Nice to see you. Wondering if hopefully people have had good days so far. There were 3 different ways to do davening with Beth Am this morning. Maybe some of you experienced them. There was on the field, led by the library minyan. There was here in the sanctuary, led by Rabbi Schatz. And then there was the Temple Beth Am kind of main service that was live streamed and zoomed from the Samuel family backyard where Chasen became a bar mitzvah, where I was with Rabbi Chorny. A lot going on tomorrow morning. I don't know why I'm making the announcements now, but I am. We have one service which is taking place at 8:30 in the morning on the field, and that will be live streamed and zoomed. So I want to do a little bit of a study with you. I didn't prepare a text sheet to hand out because there wasn't. This is going to be discussion of some ideas, but not necessarily a read through of sources. And again, I'd love some back and forth if people are interested in it. So in one of the places that Sukkot is mentioned in the Torah, we have, because the holidays are mentioned in several different places in several different parashot. We read this morning from Parshat Emor, but it also appears in Parshat Re'eh, and there are references to it in Parshat Kitisa. So there are a lot of different parts, a lot of different places of the Torah where the Torah is where this is mentioned. And I want to turn to one of them. Of course, I have the verse, but I didn't write down what verse it is. So one second. Okay, chapter 34 of the book of Exodus, book of Shemot, verse 22. So if you have an Eitz Chaim Chumash, it's page 544. If you have a Tanakh, a Bible, it's the 34th chapter of Exodus, Shemot, verse 22. So this is the part of Parshat Kitisa, which the storyline of Parshat Kitisa is the golden calf and the second tablets. But at the end of that, we get one of the run-throughs of the holidays, and each time the holidays are run through, they're described somewhat differently. So actually, if you go back a verse, Sheshit Yamim Tavod, 6 days you shall work, Uvayom Hashvi'i Tishbot, on the seventh day you shall rest. Becharish Bakatzir Tishbot, you should even rest from your plowing and from your reaping. Verse 22, V'chag Shavuot Taseh Lecha, make yourself a holiday of weeks. This is a reference to Shavuot. Shavuot, by the way, whose dating on the Jewish calendar is the most unspecific in the Torah. We place it on the 50th day after Pesach. It is not at all clear that that's exactly what the Torah had in mind. But here we're referring to that holiday. The Chag Shavuot Taseh Lecha, make yourself a holiday of weeks. Bikurei, the first ripening Katsir Chitim, of the harvest of your wheat. And you would think that since each of the holidays require their own space, that the whole verse would be Shavuot. But then mid-verse, after the Etnachta, after the wishbone, which tells you that you're halfway through a verse, we switch the Chag HaAsif, the holiday of Asif, gathering, harvest, Tekufat Hashana. Tekufat Hashana are two words which a basic level of Hebrew tells you what they mean, but it doesn't tell you what the verse means, right? We have that all the time. We discuss that in our Rashi class, that it's one thing to know what the vocab is. It's another thing to try to discern the intent of the verse. Tekufa means a period of time. Shana means year. These two words are in smichut. Tekufat hashana, the period of the time of the year. But what does that mean? It's translated here by the JPS. And the feast of ingathering, that's Ha'asif, at the turn of the year. Okay, the turn of the year. So JPS, at least this new translation of JPS, seems to say that we're at an inflection point. We're at like a fulcrum. In what way, let's say they're correct, because they might be. In what way might where we are right now on Sukkot be thought of as a turning of the year? How does that make sense agriculturally and in terms of the significance or the meaning of what the holiday represents? I'm not sure what technology is being used there, but if you're comfortable raising your hand and comfortable being unmuted. Okay, so Gary's raising his hand.
Gary, things are starting to cool down, in theory, outside LA. But things are starting. The crops are starting to finalize their fruit and everything else, and you're going to start turning down your soil and everything else.
Okay, so if we're imagining the agricultural season being during the warmer months where the nutrients can penetrate and the wheat can come through, then when we get to Sukkot, we're kind of at the end. That's very appropriate when you think about Kohelet, right, which is the biblical book that we're going to read on Shmini Atzeret, that there are seasons that turn. There is a soft overtone of the death of something around Sukkot, because it's the death of that agricultural cycle. So maybe Tekufat Hashana, according to JPS, they got it right. It's the turn of the year. It's the end of a cycle. In earlier JPS translations of the same text, it read it at the year's end, right? At the year's end. We think, and I mentioned this very briefly on one of my holiday sermons, we think of the Jewish odometer beginning at Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. We go from 5780 to 5781. But as many of you know, in the biblical understanding, our New Year holiday takes place not in the first of the month of the year, but the seventh month of the year. Tishrei is the seventh month of the year. The first month of the year is Nisan, because there's the other odometer of the Jewish people, which began at Exodus when we were brought out from slavery. And so if you start at the beginning of that cycle, both historically and agriculturally, we've come to a conclusion. And remember, if you go back to, the year 0, the year 50, the year 200, the next thing after the Sukkot holiday on the calendar is what? And certainly, actually, if you go back biblically, let's go back 2,500 years. The next thing on the Jewish calendar after Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret is Pesach. There is no Hanukkah because the story hasn't happened yet. If you go back early enough, there's no Purim, the story hasn't happened yet. So maybe this is the Tekufa. We've completed this era of the year. And aside from the weekly Shabbatot and the Rosh Chodesh, the Tekufa is not going to begin again until we get to Pesach. Okay, that's a possibility. There was an article in Haaretz in the year 2018. One of the Israeli newspapers reported that scientists at Haifa University had reconstructed the contents of one of the last 2 undeciphered Dead Sea Scrolls. They found 60 tiny fragments, some that were no bigger than a square centimeter, and they were pieced together to produce an encrypted calendar that was used by a Jewish sect that lived in the Judean desert during the Second Temple period. And in this now deciphered scroll is the first mention of the word tekufa that we can find, which is used to designate the transition between the seasons. So they use that word tekufa as, again, like an inflection point. We're going from one part of the year to another different part of the year. In rabbinic Jewish law, the word tekufa means a solstice, right? Tekufa tevet is the rabbis were referring to as the winter solstice. It's one of the significant points in the calendar where we move from one season to the next, right? I mean, remember when we were children and we learned that spring begins on March 21st or 22nd, depending on what year you're in, and summer begins on June 21st. And that is related to something specific about where the sun is with respect to the earth. But it's also the human way of marking the beginning of something and the end of something. We like that way of ordering time. So maybe Tekufat Hashanah, going back to the verse, is once you get to Sukkot with Shmini Atzeret as an add-on, that's the Tekufah. Well, let's call it a game, call it a year, call it a season. Okay. Let me linger there for a moment before I bring to you the source that is really the source that is the linchpin of what I wanted to share with you. Any questions or comments on what we've discussed so far as to what Tekufa might mean specifically vis-a-vis Sukkot? Yes, no? Okay. Some of you know of the commentator called the Netivot Shalom. Rabbi Shalom Noach Berezovsky. He was the Slonim Rebbe. From the Slonimer Hasidim. He lived, his lifespan basically spanned most of the 20th century. And he wrote a wonderful commentary on the Torah called Netivot Shalom, one of the most kind of commonly quoted Hasidic commentaries, at least amongst me and my peers, because it's accessible, it's reasonable, and it's beautiful. And he has beautiful insights both into the Torah itself and into I'm not sure he would have used this word, but that's the psychology of human living and interaction. So he says something very interesting about Chag Hasif Tekufat Hashanah, reading the text totally midrashically, right? Or maybe say totally Hasidically. Read it the following way, he would say, my friends. Forget about Tekufa, meaning a period of time. Think of Pesach. Adir hu yivnei beit HaMakaro. When we get to the tough, Takif hu, same root, taf kuf pei. Taf kuf pei can not only mean a season, an era, it can mean might. When we say takif hu, God is a God of strength. Chag ha'asif, what is this holiday of Sukkot? It is the holiday, Chag ha'asif, where we gather up tekufat Hashanah, all of the strength we're going to need for the year. It's totally violating pshat of the text. and totally beautiful. He wants us to imagine that Sukkot is the holiday because of our being exposed to the vulnerabilities of life. If you spent more than a little time in your Sukkot today, you recognize what it means to have to live outdoors without the protection of insulation and air conditioning. If one can get through Sukkot, if one learns the lessons of Sukkot, he would say, that girds you with enough tikifut, enough strength and fortitude to last the entire year. What's interesting about his commentary is that Sukkot is also Zman Simchatenu. So this is the holiday of joy, celebration. V'samachta b'chagecha. And he says, underlying that is not a moroseness, but a gravitas to living in the elements, recapitulating the aloneness, the reliance on God, and the vulnerability of the Israelites in the desert, living with a structure that is intended to fall over if there is a heavy wind. If you can get through that week, tikufat hashana, you have the strength that it takes to get through the entire year. So the Slonemer is less concerned in this verse with when this holiday happens, when it begins and when it ends, but more what happens to us while we're celebrating it. The calendar says, read other places in the Torah to find the calendar of the year. This is the spiritual calendar. What is supposed to be happening to us by our observing the holiday of Sukkot? I think this is a lovely way of reading the text in general, even more so this year, right? This year where precariousness seems to be hovering everywhere we look. How many times a day have you all said to yourself or to one another, this is precarious, but I'm alive? And when you get to the second half of that sentence, there's a surge. The world seems to be crumbling, but I'm doing okay. We're living through a pandemic, but I've got my health, and I've got, God willing, my family, and I have my well-being. Chag ha'asif tikufat hashana. If you can find a way to celebrate that kind of a moment, then you are gathering strength moving forward. I remember, starting in April at some point, rabbis and cantors around the country started to dread the season. First of all, we couldn't imagine a pandemic really lasting that long because we'd never experienced anything like it. We did Pesach, at the last minute, everyone just throwing everything they had at that holiday, but we figured that was the last time we were really going to have to do something so different than usual. We were totally dreading Yamim Noraim. In fact, there were many rabbinic puns out there saying that this year, the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, would really be Norah. Remember that Norah in Hebrew can mean not only something that is deserving of awe, but awful. And what works that way in English as well. That's what that word means, awful, right? That these might be indeed Yamim Noraim, Noraim. Just a debacle of a celebration of a Jewish year. And what's fascinating for me, and I say this as a rabbi and as a Jew, and I'm thinking even of at the bar mitzvah this morning, they have become Yamim Noraim. These have been days of awe. Awe for what can be produced in trying circumstances. Awe at the patience that people can extend to one another and the graciousness. Awe at the creativity and the inventiveness of the Jewish people and of all people to come to terms with producing something of significance in limited circumstances. And I hope you, am deriving strength from this. I have experienced this whole season, and now we're at Sukkot, as being Chag Ha'asif Tikufat Hashana, a holiday in which my understanding of what it means to observe it now is gathering my strength that will hopefully sustain me for the rest of the year. So the Slonemer could not have predicted Sukkot 2020. And I don't know if there was a particular moment in his life that had him associate Sukkot with this notion, but I'll never read that verse the same way again. Right? The first half of the verse, Shavuot, yes, that is about the first fruits. Sukkot, get ready for the winter. Sukkot, you're a squirrel gathering nuts. Sukkot, look around you and bank in your emotional and spiritual reservoir the things that you've witnessed in others, the things that you've witnessed in yourself that are going to fill you up for whatever may come next until we, wait for it, are born again at Pesach. Because Pesach is the next Tikufat Hashanah, where the seasons begin again. Pesach is rebirth. Pesach is Exodus. Pesach is things beginning again. That's waiting for us, but it's a long winter until we get there. So I'm so grateful to the Slotimer for that insight. Thoughts, comments, reactions. We certainly are late enough in the night that we can go straight into Mari, but if there are reactions to the Slotimer's teaching or anything that I've said, I'd love to hear them. Going once, going twice. Shalom al Yisrael. So I wish you a good Shabbos and a good Yantif on that note. And I do hope that there have been aspects of this season and this holiday where you feel like you're gathering strength that will last you through this kind of endless year that is not changing anytime soon. Okay, we'll go to Mariv. Hold on. This is particularly sad that we do this without a minion because of the Baraku for weeknight Yantif is such a lovely tune, just like the Rosh Hashanah Erev tune is so lovely. Only sung 3 nights of the year, and the Mariv tune for Yantifs also sung a few more times in the year, but deserves to be sung all the way out. Of course, we're not going to be able to do that tonight, but we'll do the Chatimot to that tune. So I don't have the right pages. This is going to be frustrating. I'm only going to be able to call pages from the Lev Shalem, but I'll help. You're looking for the evening service for Shabbat and Yantif. I think in the full volume Sim Shalom it's like 279. If I'm not making that up, I don't remember. It should be at the very beginning of the Slim Shalom, maybe right after Kabbalat Shabbat, maybe page, I don't know, 20 or 25. Look around there. Sorry, I don't have a precise page for you. But in the Lev Shalom, we begin with a blessing after the Baraku on page 39. Baruch atah Adonai asher bara. Umavir yom maybe laila mavdil ben yom vein laila Adonai tzvaot shemo el chai v'kayam tamidim lo chaleinu leolam va'ed baruch atah Adonai hamariv aravim ahavat olam beit yisomchat. כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו בהם נגע יומם בלילה ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל אל מלך נאמן שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו Adonai Echad. Liot lachem leElohim, ani Adonai Elohechem emet. Ve'emunah kol zo v'kayam aleinu. Umalchuto baratzon kiblu alehem Moshe v'nei solachanu shira besimcha rabba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha ba'alim Adonai mi kamocha nadar b'kodesh norati lo tosef eleh malchutecha ra'uhu banecha bo kayam lifnei Moshe zeli Anu v'yamru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nemar kifad Adonai Yaakov ugalo miyad chazak mimenu baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Ufras aleinu sukkah shlomecha baruch atah Adonai haborei sukkah shalom aleinu v'yakol amo Yisrael v'yal Yerushalayim. Please rise. Vaydaber Moshe moadei Adonai el bnei Yisrael. You now go back to the same page you were in when you said the Amidah for Mincha. The only difference is that because it's Saturday night, you make the inclusions for the Saturday night. We basically do our Havdalah between Shabbat and the second day of Yontif within the Amidah. In the Lev Shalem, it's 306. It's wherever the Yontif Amidah is for in the other two Sidurim. Again, inclusions for Sukkot and Saturday night at the end of Shabbat. Almost 7. Almost 7. We're just about done. I told you it'd be 45 minutes. ושמחת בחגיך והיית אך שמח ושמחת בחגיך אך שמח ושמחת בחגיך והיית אך שמח ושמחת בחגיך והיית אך שמח ידה ניי 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 ידה ניי 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 yada na 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 yada da 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 ya 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 yada na 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 da 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 yada da da dun 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 ya 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 da 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 ababa ya 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 ya. We continue with the Aleinu, which we found in the Lev Shalem on 281, Slim Shalom 297, 696 in the Sim Shalom.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה, לייצר ראשית שלו, עשנו כגוי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורר עלינו ככל המונה, ואנחנו קוראים להשתחווים ומודים. לפני וקיים הקדוש ברוך הוא עונת שמיים
ומשה יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגוהי מר הוא אלוהינו אינו מלכנו אפזולתו ככתוב בתורתו ידעת יום בהשבותה אל לבביך כי אדוני הוא אלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד על כן הקבל. Do you want to do an MR? Want to do an MR?
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Mourner's Kaddish, Kaddish Tom can be found on page 282, 298, or 698. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemer rabba v'yalma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael b'agala uv'izman kari v'meru amen yehi shemei rabba mevorach le'olam le'omei almayah yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudusha b'rechu le'la min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbachata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom v'mamav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Just a few announcements. First of all, Leonard and Rebecca, lovely that I think you're joining us from your sukkah. If I can see in the background, so nice to be brought in as your digital ushpizin. Tomorrow morning, tonight, the reason we're not going to do Kiddush here because Kiddush is done in the Sukkah. Remember that you do the special Kiddush for Saturday night for Yontif, which includes also a paragraph of Havdalah. So just follow along in a Siddur or in a bencher. Tomorrow morning, there's one service. It's 8:30 in the morning, taking place in a real minyan on Ziering Field and accessible through live stream and Zoom. We are not gathering as a minyan on Zoom tomorrow for Yontif Mincha, but there will be Mariv in the daily minyan link after after Yantif is over. So there's not going to be an opportunity to say Kaddish at Mincha tomorrow through Beth Am, Shachrit, Musaf, yes, and then Mariv. But we're not doing Yantif Mincha as a community. And unless there are any other announcements or questions, I'll bid you adieu to you and you and you, bump, and a Chag Sameach, and a good Yantif, and a Shavua Tov. And I miss you all, and I love you all, and I hope I can see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Moadim l'simcha.
Chag Guzel, as Rabbi Lucas would say.
Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach, Judy. Bye, everyone. Bye, Danny. Bye, Michelle. Bye, Aaron. Bye, Marlise. Bye, Gary.
Bye. Good to see all of you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm moving.
Chag Sameach, Michelle and Aaron and Danny.
Thanks, Judy.
So good to see you. Marlise and Gary, Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, Judy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.